Russia continues to suffer from a wounded currency, and we will discuss how this could lead to a bank run. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's get into this news right away. Russian central bank says to take measures to support financial stability. This article is out of Reuters, talking about what has happened in recent times here. I did a video about it a couple days ago as it was starting to break out, and this right here said the Russian central bank said on Wednesday it would take several measures aimed at bringing financial stability to domestic markets that have been shaken by a ruble decline. I'm sure you're aware of what's happening right now. I won't get into the depth of it, but we are anticipating today at this moment, anticipating Putin's message to the world. We'll have to see what he says. Of course, these measures have already been taken place by the time his speech is out there. So he's simply out there to be, just as the other leaders of the world are, just to be a face in front of the camera reading off their teleprompters. So they also said that this was down 50% against the US currency this year. Now, this is a devaluation of their currency in many ways. This is a currency war that has taken place when individuals themselves are hurting, never mind the country itself. So let's get on to this right here. Out of Market Watch, I'll read just a few of Putin's quotes here. He said this, that the politically motivated sanctions represent a mistake, and the West should not have broken a mechanism of checks and balances. This is a really strong words coming, and he said this: our American friends are cutting off the branch they are sitting on. These are very threatening words that he's speaking right here, and I wanted to connect this in to what I wrote about in my book, and essentially it's this: China and Russia have decided to renounce the US dollar and resort to using their own currencies. This equates to a huge shift of flow of credit to the US moving into the developing world. Now, obviously, there's a problem right now where the money is definitely flowing out of Russia. But the overall consensus with most nations around the world and supranational entities like the IMF is that the US has run its course in many ways. We know specifically that when times are tough, when currencies are sliding, money seems to flow into the US dollar. But it's sort of really a paradox when you think about it, because people know that the US dollar is a terrible currency. We know that the debt of the US can never be paid back, yet money continues to flow into it. So the very long-term outlook here is that the US will fall. But then you look on a shorter term, they're thinking we still have the Federal Reserve, we can still print up trillions of dollars, so we'll put our money there. And what happens is the Russian currency is suffering right now, the ruble. So let's move on here to what has happened just in these past 2 days here, and you'll see how the index actually was boosted as soon as they put these measures into place and made them public. You could see the stock market going up quite a bit as soon as those measures were put into place. So at least in terms of the stocks, they are being taken care of in this respect. So let's go on to what they said in Bloomberg. Traders betting on Russia's next move will be to sell gold. Now, I'm not necessarily agreeing, but this is what they're saying right here. Russia's surprise interest rate increase failed to stop the plummeting ruble, another tool available to repair economic havoc caused by sanctions and falling oil prices. Selling gold. They have just over 1,000 metric tons of gold, and it seems like they are suggesting that they could sell the gold in order to, make up the shortfall that's occurring right here. I believe that this could be an option for them. However, I don't see them selling all their gold, considering the fact that they have been accumulating over these past few years quite a bit. So tough times, of course, call for these tough measures, but it would be hard to believe that they would sell off all of their gold. I don't think that that really would be a good option for them, especially when it's only 10% of their foreign reserves. But good information to know. We'll see what happens there. This again out of Bloomberg. Russian bank could be in the bank run could be in the cards, and this is pretty interesting stuff. When we look at bank runs, people never think that a bank run could occur, but it has occurred just in the recent years in so many countries around the world. Now, of course, most of the time it is insured, so the people get their money back, and of course the central bank of that nation is always there to backstop it. But of course, when it happens to be too widespread, you have a bank holiday, and then you have massive amounts of monetary easing, and then you can have capital controls where you can't pull your money out. If you need your money for an emergency, they will not allow it. So they said this: the Russian economy may come to a, quote, sudden stop, and a bank run could be in the cards, according to this analyst. They also said a full-blown currency and financial crisis scenario seems to be unfolding in Russia in what was supposed to be a quiet week as we head into the holiday season. So that is quite amazing to see what is happening so drastically, so quickly, that a currency can be devalued. People are so confident in whatever currency they hold, but it can happen so rapidly that you cannot react, and especially if they call a bank holiday, you will not be able to react. This is very important information, not just for Russia. You need to realize that wherever you live, whatever country that is, you could be affected by a similar situation. Things happen rapidly. They do not happen very slowly for the most part. When you see a crisis, these things happen fast. Let's move on. Right here, out of the Daily Mail, Russians flock to stores to preempt the price rises. This goes to show you how fast things could occur. Russian consumers flocked to the stores Wednesday, frantically buying a range of big-ticket items to preempt the price rises kicked off by the staggering fall in the value of the ruble in recent days. So what do people do? They just go out and spend their money, knowing that it's going to be worth less the next day. And when you have very high rates of inflation, this is what happens. All because of a devalued currency. It's not real wealth that they're holding on to. They're holding on to a piece of paper. That piece of paper is really worth nothing if it can be devalued so rapidly. This is what happens when you have currency wars. This has happened so many times to so many countries. Historically, I've researched this, and I'm sure that you have too, and we see the same thing happening. So we use a crisis like this as a crystal ball in order to predict the future for whatever country it is that you are in. That's why when I do videos about particular countries, you may think that everything is fine right now, but if we cherry pick, in fact, certain statistics, we are able to then use those, compare them to other things that we have seen in history in order to have a good idea. It doesn't mean that every nation is going to fall so easily, just like certain nations, but we use that in order to have a good idea, and then you make preparations based on that. This is exactly how you do prepare. You do not want it to happen. You don't buy insurance thinking that something's going to happen. You make those preparations in order to be strong and to be safe. This right here is a translated article, but basically said this: food retailers are faced with the suspension of deliveries. They told these suppliers and the retailers the main reason the currency jumps and the devaluation of the ruble. Players cannot plan their activities in the current environment. This is exactly what happens when you have a currency crisis. They can't figure out what's going to happen the next day, so they have to stop. They have to actually halt their business. This obviously hurts them in a major way. So something to look at in the future as well. And this all connects in internationally as well. We look at each individual country, and then we need to look at how they are in the wider sense. U.S. The U.S. risks losing influence at the IMF after long-delayed reforms were left out of a 2015 budget deal in Congress. Christine Lagarde is very outspoken, in fact, saying that she expressed her disappointment and now exploring alternative options. This is what happens when they try to impose their will on other countries. And this right here at the bottom, the adoption of the reforms remains critical to strengthen the fund's credibility, legitimacy, and effectiveness, and to ensure it has sufficient permanent resources to meet its members' needs. This is how it happens when you have other supranational entities dictating the policies around the world. But we have seen China, we have seen other nations around the world wanting to use the IMF as sort of a reserve currency, wanting to go away from the US dollar. Russia, China, and the BRIC nations have all denounced the US dollar. We've seen other countries around the world wanting to use their own currencies to do trade, and in fact have begun. Of course, there is a long way to go. We know specifically that these trades are minimal compared to the trading that is done with the US dollar, but it is still very relevant, and we need to realize that this is a big change for the long-term future. We use the crises that are happening today in order to predict the future. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to become an insider. The insiders are where I give out all my best intel for free. That is available at themoneygps.com. Just scroll down to the bottom, then you fill in your email address, and you get occasional emails from me with good, short, concise info.